Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in the life and art of Freddie Mercury. The mention of his name triggers these flashes of theatrical genius, the soaring anthems, and that unmistakable four-octave vocal power that really defines Queen. He's often celebrated as the ultimate showman, a rock icon who was just, born to be on the stage, wrapped in silks and sequins.
But the more you dive into the sources, the clearer it becomes that the persona that Freddie Mercury the world knew was precisely that, a persona. It was a meticulously crafted, spectacular mask designed to shield the intensely private, often shy man underneath.
That's the core tension we need to explore today. We have a mountain of sources detailing his life from birth to his final moments, and our mission is to peel back the layers of that spectacle. We want to find the specific nuggets of knowledge that explain how Farrokh Bulsara, the Parsi boy from Zanzibar, engineered his own transformation into the global, genre-shattering rock god we remember.
It's a study in profound duality and a journey into how a refugee built his own royalty, and we are going to use the specific contradictions in the source material to guide us.
Right.
The difference between the man who cherished privacy and the artist who courted maximum visibility is staggering. And understanding that gap is the only way to truly understand his legacy.
So let's start right at the beginning, tracing the foundations of the man who decided to name his band Queen. Okay, so we begin in an environment that is just utterly removed from 1970s London rock and roll. Farrokh Bulsara was born on September 5, 1946, in Stone Town, Zanzibar, which at the time was a British protectorate. For many listeners, this background is often overlooked or unknown, but it's such critical context.
It is absolutely foundational. His family, Bohemian and Bulsara, were Indian Parsis who hailed from Gujarat. They practiced Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions. His father worked as a cashier for the British Colonial Office, which meant a certain level of comfort and adherence to traditional Parsi expectations.
And what did those expectations involve?
Well, they valued discretion, education, and propriety. Things that are, a world away from rock and roll.
That tradition immediately clashes with the life he would eventually lead. He didn't spend all his youth in Zanzibar, though. He was living with relatives in India when he started piano lessons at the age of 7. And then, at age 8, he was sent away to a British-style boarding school, St. Peter's School in Panchgani near Bombay.
And sending a young boy to a boarding school like that, particularly one modeled on the British system, is designed to instill discipline and a certain cultural structure. But it also fosters independence. And critically for Farrokh, it provided an outlet for his burgeoning talent.
This is also where he first adopted the name Freddie.
Yes, among his friends.
Yeah.
It was a move toward Anglicization, a first step in testing out new identities, away from parental influence.
And that musical talent was evident immediately. At age 12, he formed his first band, the Hectics. They were covering American and British pop like Cliff Richard and Elvis. It wasn't about composing yet, it was about performance and emulation.
The anecdotes from that period are so telling. A close friend noted his uncanny ability to instantly replay what he heard on the piano. This isn't just a sign of a good ear, it suggests an extraordinary auditory memory.
Which would be essential later on.
Absolutely. For a composer and vocalist who would later rely heavily on writing these complex arrangements and harmonies in his head, this was the central mechanism of his genius, developed right there in Panchgani.
On a physical note, which is often discussed, our sources detail the specific trait that Mercury himself believed was the source of his massive vocal range, the 4 extra incisors.
Yes, the famous teeth. He always theorized that the extra space in his mouth gave his vocal cords more resonance and depth. It speaks volumes that this famously flamboyant man who was obsessed with image refused any orthodontic correction for fear of impacting his instrument.
The art came first.
Always. The voice, it always superseded physical vanity.
I found another detail from that period that it humanizes him completely. The Stamp album.
His Philetely collection.
Yeah.
He maintained this stamp album between the ages of 9 and 12, primarily collecting British Commonwealth stamps, again tying into that colonial history of Zanzibar and India. This album, one of his very rare surviving personal possessions, is displayed at the Postal Museum in London.
It's such a poignant detail.
It really is. The future showman, known for excess and chaos, devoted his early years to the meticulous, quiet order of organizing stamps. It just underscores the dual nature we're investigating.
And that ordered, traditional life was violently interrupted. In 1963, he returned to Zanzibar, but But the family stability was shattered by the 1964 Zanzibar revolution. They fled the ensuing violence, moving to Feltham, Middlesex, England.
And this is a turning point that you cannot underestimate. Farrokh Bulsara and his family became refugees. They went from a middle-class, comfortable, culturally specific existence to suddenly being displaced in a new country.
The psychological impact must have been immense.
Of course. Being uprooted, losing your sense of place and inherited identity often translates into an intense need to build a new, stronger, impermeable identity.
It creates a foundational instability. And when you look at his later insistence on the name Queen, the elaborate stage costumes, the whole regal identity, you can see how he might have been subconsciously compensating for that lost stability, building his own untouchable kingdom.
Precisely. And in England, the transformation accelerated. He enrolled at Isleworth Polytechnic, focusing on art, before transferring to Ealing Art College, where he pursued graphic art and design, graduating in 1969.
And this wasn't just a backup plan. This was a crucial skill set. He didn't just understand music, he understood visual presentation, typography, and symbolic communication, skills he would leverage to design the Queen logo itself.
But before the logo, though, came the struggle. That transition period between 1969 and 1970 offers a fascinating look at the duality manifesting even before fame. He held down jobs like working as a baggage handler at Heathrow Airport.
Can you imagine? The Fuker Stadium rock god handling your luggage. It's incredible. And he also sold secondhand Edwardian clothes at Kensington Market alongside future Queen drummer Roger Taylor.
Right. And Taylor's memory of him then was as a crazy mate, full of energy. But other friends from that same period remember him as profoundly quiet and shy, a retiring figure.
So he was already turning the persona on and off depending on the audience?
He was workshopping the character. Musically, he was restless. We need to spend a little more time on his pre-Queen bands because those failures were instrumental to Queen's success. First, there was Ibex, which he later renamed Wreckage. Sources describe their sound as a heavy, very Hendrix-style blues.
Then came Sour Milk Sea. Neither band took off. This was a period of intense frustration, but it also taught him the importance of perfectionism, composition, and visual flair. All things lacking in the heavy blues scene he was trying to break into. The music was too loose, too jammed. He needed control.
And control arrived in April 1970 when he joined forces with Brian May and Roger Taylor, who had been in the band Smile. This is the definitive moment of transformation. Freddie Bulsara becomes Freddie Mercury. He immediately insisted on the band being renamed Queen, brushing aside initial reservations from others.
He described the name as very regal, splendid, universal, and immediate. He was clearly creating a world, and he was completely aware of the subtext, acknowledging the gay connotations, but characterizing it as just one facet. It was a theatrical choice, not a confessional one, designed to maximize spectacle.
And by 1970, he legally changed his surname to Mercury, fully committing to this new, volatile, shining identity. Why Mercury? The Roman messenger god. The element itself is quicksilver, unpredictable, shiny, and highly reactive.
It's the ultimate statement of transformation, leaving the solid traditional name of Bulsara behind.
And the crowning achievement of this new identity was the Queen crest, designed by Mercury himself shortly before the first album release, leveraging his Ealing Art College skills. It's not just a logo, it's a statement of collaboration and ambition.
Let's break down the symbolism because it's so intentional.
Well, Mercury was a Virgo, known for perfectionism and attention to detail. So he placed two mythological fairies, traditionally associated with the Virgo sign, in the design. He included two lions, representing John Deacon and Roger Taylor, both Leos, and then a crab, representing Brian May, a Cancer.
It's a literal map of the band's identity, all surrounding a bold, stylized letter Q with a crown inside, framed by flames and protected by an immense phoenix, signifying rebirth and resurrection.
And that aesthetic choice is crucial. The entire design bears a highly stylized resemblance to the royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom, specifically the British monarchy's shield. He essentially created a personalized coat of arms for his self-made royalty.
It's the visual synthesis of everything he was striving for. Tradition, power, and spectacle, all wrapped up in a package of high art. It's the visual proof that the shy, displaced boy from Zanzibar had established his own kingdom. Now, let's move from the visual identity he engineered to the staggering revolutionary artistry that backed it up.
We absolutely have to start with the voice, because it is the engine of the entire phenomenon. We know the total known vocal range spanned 4 octaves, from bass low F or F2 to soprano high F, F6. But what does that actually mean for the listener?
It means he could effectively sing across the range of an entire vocal choir. While his speaking voice was a baritone, his performance voice was consistently tenor, which requires immense strength and control in the upper register. But crucially, it wasn't just the width of the range. It was the ability to transition seamlessly between those registers. He wasn't constrained by one vocal identity. And the technical brilliance was recognized even by those outside rock. Spanish soprano Montserrat Caballé, his later collaborator, praised his technique as astonishing. She noted that he was selling the voice, meaning he wasn't just singing notes, he was performing them emotionally and gliding effortlessly between the various registers required in his complex songs.
That ability to glide is often where rock singers fail. They can belt, but the transitions are harsh. Mercury was noted for his expressive nuance and incisive sense of rhythm, which he maintained even through difficult vocal acrobatics. This is why his peers held him in such high regard.
Roger Daltrey of the Who Didn't Mince Words, calling him the best virtuoso rock and roll singer of all time. It's an endorsement of his technical mastery, his ability to tackle any genre and make it his own.
And we see that mastery acknowledged even in musical theater. Andrew Lloyd Webber, looking for an actor to fill the role in Jesus Christ Superstar, required a genuine rock tenor, explicitly stating, really think Freddie Mercury, that's the kind of range we're talking about. Mercury set the technical benchmark for the modern rock tenor.
In 2016, science even attempted to unpack the appeal. A research study analyzed his vocal samples, comparing him to classical singers, and identified two truly unique features.
The first was a notably faster vibrato. Vibrato is the slight, rapid fluctuation in pitch that gives warmth and character to a voice. Most opera singers have a vibrato that hovers between 5.5 and 6 Hz cycles per second. Mercury's was substantially faster, often approaching 7 or even 8 Hz. This contributes to that slightly dizzying, electrifying intensity you hear in his sustained notes.
And the second feature, which is more obscure, was the use of subharmonics. For a layperson, what exactly are subharmonics, and why did they make his voice unique?
Okay, so subharmonics are layers of sound produced below the fundamental frequency that the vocal cords are primarily vibrating at. Think of it less like simple singing and more like a less extreme form of throat singing or a complex wind instrument. It's a mechanism often associated with the very unique sounds of opera singers who specialize in the lowest notes, or even Tibetan throat singers.
So he was creating these extra layers of sound.
The study suggested he might have been engaging the false vocal folds, the structures above the true vocal cords, to create these complex, textured layers, adding immense depth and a growl that few others could replicate.
So his voice was technically masterful and physically unique. What's even more astounding is that this vocalist was also the primary architect of Queen's most successful and complex work. He wrote 10 of the 17 songs on Queen's greatest hit songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, Killer Queen, Somebody to Love, and Don't Stop Me Now.
And his compositional choices were governed by an active, even aggressive, anti-repetition ethos. He said, "I hate doing the same thing again and again." This quote defines Queen's trajectory. They could have easily churned out stadium rock for 2 decades, but Mercury constantly pushed them into new territory, incorporating rockabilly, heavy metal, progressive rock, gospel, and disco, sometimes all within the same album.
And he proved he could master complexity and simplicity equally. Bohemian Rhapsody is the masterpiece of complexity. It's famous for its non-cyclical structure. Explain that for us. What does non-cyclical mean in the context of rock music?
Well, most pop music is cyclical. You have a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and a chorus out. It's a structure designed for repetition and memorability. Bohemian Rhapsody is non-cyclical because it follows a linear narrative. It has distinct movements, ballad, operatic interlude, hard rock, reflective coda that don't repeat. It's more akin to a classical rhapsody or a suite than a 3-minute pop song. It also uses dozens of different chords and key changes, making it revolutionary in 1975.
It's the polar opposite of Crazy Little Thing Called Love.
Exactly. That song provides the perfect contrast. He composed it rapidly in the bath on a guitar, an instrument he admitted he only had rudimentary skills on, using only a limited set of chords. It was pure, simple rockabilly flair, proving that his genius wasn't dependent on technical extravagance, but rather on musical intuition and instinct.
That contradiction extends to his composition method. He created these highly intricate, multi-tracked harmonies, yet he admitted he could barely read music. He composed almost everything on the piano.
It's a testament to his auditory memory, developed back in India. He felt that learning notation might limit his intuition. Brian May, however, always defended his piano playing, noting that while he might not have been a classical virtuoso, he had a wonderful touch and injected everything he played with incredible rhythm and emotion. His mind was the score.
Now, let's move from the meticulously controlled studio environment to the chaos he created live, because that's where the Freddie Mercury persona truly fused with the artistry.
His live presence was, quite simply, unparalleled. David Bowie, who knew theatrical rock, praised Mercury for taking it over the edge. But the real insight comes from Brian May, who noted Mercury's incredible power to connect. May observed that Mercury could make the last person at the back of the furthest stand in a stadium feel that he was connected.
It wasn't just a show for the audience, it was a show with them. He transformed passive listening into active participation. And part of that visual connection involved his most iconic stage accessory, the broken microphone stand.
It has a wonderfully accidental origin story. Early in his career, the heavy bass of the stand snapped off during a performance, probably due to his aggressive movements. Instead of discarding it, he realized the remaining half the stick and the mic could be wielded like a scepter or a weapon. He found he could use it in endless ways to interact with the crowd, to pose, and to embody that royal military aesthetic he was building.
It became an essential tool of his dominance, and that dominance peaked for the world at Live Aid in 1985. It's universally recognized as the greatest live performance in rock history.
It was a perfect confluence of ambition, timing, and raw talent. The six-song set was calculated for maximum impact. While people remember the entire show, the moment that defined it was his sustained note during the a cappella section, the note heard round the world. It wasn't just a note. It was a test of the audience, a demonstration of control, and an undeniable moment of shared global awe.
Critics cemented that feeling. John Harris, years later, called Mercury easily the most godlike of all rock frontmen, specifically referencing that Dionysian energy he unleashed at Wembley. He managed to channel chaos into absolute control.
That control stemmed from ambition. Mercury famously described Queen's scale by saying, "We're the Cecil B. DeMille of rock and roll," referring to the grand Hollywood epic filmmaker. They didn't just want to play shows, they wanted to stage events.
That ambition took them to record-breaking territory. They became pioneers, becoming one of the first Western bands to truly conquer South American stadiums, performing to massive crowds in São Paulo in 1981. They also ventured behind the Iron Curtain, playing to 80,000 people in Budapest in 1986. They took the show everywhere, regardless of the political climate.
Which makes his final performance all the more poignant. His last live appearance with Queen was August 9, 1986 at Knebworth Park. Estimates put the attendance at up to 200,000 people. Brian May recalled Mercury telling the band just before the show, "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably the last time."
He knew, even if the public didn't.
And he made it a grand theatrical finale. As the concert closed and the sound system played the national anthem, God Save the Queen, Mercury reappeared on stage for his final visual. He was draped in a regal robe, holding a golden crown aloft, accepting the adoration of the immense crowd before walking off for the last time. It was the absolute, deliberate zenith of the spectacle he had spent 2 decades constructing.
A king taking his final bow in his self-made kingdom.
We've established the grandeur of the stage persona, but that persona sometimes felt too confined by the democratic structure of Queen. He had impulses that required solo expression. His very first solo effort, which is often forgotten, was back in 1972, before Queen's debut, under the highly unusual pseudonym Larry Lurex.
That pseudonym is a fascinating glimpse into his self-deprecating humor. Lurex is a metallic fiber used in shimmering fabrics. He recorded a couple of tracks for a Trident Studios project, essentially testing the waters of performing under a different guise, demonstrating that the desire for artistic experimentation was present right from the start.
His major solo output, however, came in 1985 with Mr. Bad Guy. It performed well, debuting in the UK Top 10, and showcased a more disco and dance-oriented side of his writing, distinct from Queen's hard rock focus.
And that solo album's success endured. A remix of the single Living on My Own unexpectedly topped the UK charts posthumously in 1993, winning him an Ivor Novello Award. Critics at the time noted how he successfully stretched into uncharted territory, embracing the synth pop and dance sounds that Queen had only touched on.
But the truly genre-shattering solo work came in 1988 with Barcelona, an album recorded with Spanish opera legend Montserrat Caballé. This was the ultimate high-low cultural blend, an opera-pop hybrid. Why was this blending of such disparate genres so important to him?
It goes back to his deep-seated desire to avoid repetition and challenge convention. He adored Caballé in traditional opera, seeing it as the ultimate form of high drama and high artistry, which in many ways was the purest extension of his own theatrical rock. It was a fusion that critics found bizarre, bordering on parody, but Mercury was serious about it.
It certainly found an audience. Despite initial skepticism, the album was a commercial hit, and the title track, Barcelona, was subsequently chosen as the official anthem for the 1992 Summer Olympics. It placed his voice not just in the rock history books, but in the global cultural canon.
A small, tantalizing detail from his solo period are the unreleased collaborations he recorded with Michael Jackson between 1981 and 1983, including demos for State of Shock, Victory, and There Must Be More to Life Than This.
These were shrouded in rock mythology for years. Jackson later re-recorded State of Shock with Mick Jagger, but Mercury ultimately used his solo version of There Must Be More to Life Than This on Mr. Bad Guy. Queen later successfully reworked the track using Mercury's original vocals and released it on Queen Forever in 2014. It highlights the cross-pollination of his artistic world.
Though those sessions ended abruptly, sources suggest there were artistic clashes. Mercury found it difficult to work with Jackson's Pat Lama in the studio, and Jackson was reportedly frustrated by Mercury's demanding pace. It's another anecdote that shows Mercury's intense commitment to his own process, regardless of the star power sitting next to him.
That intensity and complexity of his artistic life are fully mirrored in his personal relationships. We have to start with Mary Austin, the woman who was his anchor. He met her in 1969, and they were a couple living together in West Kensington until 1976 when he revealed his sexuality, ending the romantic side of their relationship.
What's truly extraordinary is that the relationship didn't just survive, it deepened. He called Austin his common-law wife, and in a very rare public quote about his private life, he said, "All my lovers ask me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible. The only friend I've got is Mary, and I don't want anybody else." She was the keeper of his confidence, the only person he fully trusted.
That trust was cemented by his actions. Austin not only picked out his final home, the Grand Garden Lodge mansion in Kensington, but she inherited the majority of his estate. He left her the house and 50% of his privately owned shares, reportedly saying, "You would have been my wife and it would have been yours anyway." It was a lifelong bond that transcended sexuality and romance.
However, his romantic life in the late 70s and early 80s was intense and varied. While based in Munich from 1979 to 1985, he had a significant committed relationship with German restaurateur Winfried Winnie Kirchberger. A close friend, Peter Freestone, referred to Kirchberger as his great love during his German years, and Mercury wore a silver wedding band he received from him for many years.
But the relationship that endured through his illness was with Irish-born hairdresser Jim Hutton, whom he met in a club in 1985. Mercury often referred to him as his husband.
Hutton moved into Garden Lodge and nursed Mercury through the final difficult years, even though Hutton himself received an HIV-positive diagnosis in 1990. It was a relationship built on mutual support and fierce loyalty. The commitment was symbolized by the gold wedding band Hutton gave him in 1986, which Mercury wore until his body was cremated.
Now, we must address the recent, still contested claim regarding a secret daughter. A 2025 biography introduced the explosive claim that Mercury fathered a daughter, referred to as B, in 1976 following a brief affair with a friend's wife, alleging he secretly shared parental responsibilities.
It's important to treat this impartially, as the sources present conflicting viewpoints. The biography relies on the mother's and the friend's testimony. However, this claim was met with significant skepticism from those closest to Mercury.
Right. Brian May's wife, Anita Dobson, expressed immediate doubt, and Mary Austin was highly critical of the claim, stating she could not imagine Mercury, who was so private, yet also deeply cherished joy, keeping such a joyful event secret from her or his other closest confidants. She reiterated that she had absolutely no knowledge of any child or related documentation, like diaries. The matter remains contested, but it highlights the layers of secrecy that surrounded him.
Which brings us back full circle to the duality. We're talking about a man who filled stadiums yet rarely gave interviews and was cripplingly shy off stage. He himself acknowledged this tension, saying, "When I'm performing, I'm an extrovert, yet inside, I'm a completely different man."
That shyness extended to his heritage. Despite his Parsi Indian roots, he remained largely silent on his ethnic and religious background, making the persona entirely apolitical and culturally ambiguous. The closest he ever came to an open reference was calling himself a Persian popinjay.
That silence was deliberate. His longtime assistant, Peter Freestone, noted that Mercury was deeply influenced by British culture, almost wishing he had been born aged 18 in Feltham. He shed the identity of Farrokh Bulsara, the refugee, to fully embody the identity of Freddie Mercury, the spectacular English rock star.
Furthermore, he actively refused to use his celebrity for political gain, a major point of contrast with many of his peers in the 1980s. He believed politics and celebrity should remain separate spheres.
He was quite pointed about this, contrasting himself with figures like John Lennon, arguing, "People with mere talent, like me, have not got the ability or power to preach and affect people's thoughts." Freestone recalled that Mercury actively abhorred bands like U2 for mixing celebrity and politics.
He viewed his job as an entertainer, not a moral or political leader. Interestingly, while he never voted, Freestone speculated that due to the high taxation policies of the Labor government in the 1970s, Mercury might have privately favored the conservative. But he kept such opinions strictly private, believing they were relevant only to the individual.
So we have the grand, regal spectacle juxtaposed against the intensely private man who avoids political noise. What was the one area where that intensity melted away? His cats.
His deep love for his many cats is perhaps the most endearing contradiction of his life. He cared for at least 10 cats throughout his life: Jerry, Oscar, Tiffany, and his favorite, Delilah. He placed as much importance on these beloved animals as on any human life.
This wasn't just passive affection. He actively celebrated them. He wrote the song Delilah for his favorite cat, which appeared on the Innuendo album, and famously, he dedicated the entire liner notes of his Mr. Bad Guy solo album to his cats, concluded with the sign-off, "Screw everybody else."
It's the ultimate soft, grounding detail about a man who lived so much of his life in the chaotic spotlight. The only creatures he truly trusted and felt comfortable with were those who demanded nothing of the persona. The final chapter of his life, his struggle with AIDS, was characterized by the same fierce privacy and dedication to art that defined his entire career. Tracing the timeline, the sources suggest possible early HIV symptoms as early as 1982, when he sought private medical advice in New York for a white lesion on his tongue.
That lesion was likely hairy leukoplakia. And for the non-medical listener, that is a white patch, often fuzzy, on the side of the tongue, which is frequently an early clinical sign of a weakened immune system, often associated with HIV. He knew something was wrong, but the official AIDS diagnosis, according to Jim Hutton, wasn't delivered until late April 1987.
The media rumors began swirling intensely around 1986, fueled by his increasingly gaunt appearance and Queen's halting of touring. Yet he kept the diagnosis a secret, only informing his Queen bandmates in May 1989.
The reasons for his secrecy were twofold. First, to maintain his own privacy and dignity during a period when the disease carried immense social stigma. Second, and crucially, to protect the privacy of those around him, his friends, family, and partners, from the inevitable media circus and scrutiny that would follow.
Despite the failing health, his determination to work never waned. His final creative period in Montreux, Switzerland in 1991 remains one of the most powerful stories in rock history.
Assistant engineer Justin Shirley Smith described the atmosphere in the studio during those final sessions as very happy, which is remarkable given the circumstances. Mercury refused to acknowledge or dwell on his illness, stating, "I'm not going to think about it, I'm going to do this."
He was driven by an almost frantic need to create. Brian May recalled that Mercury constantly pleaded with them, "Write me more, write me stuff, I want to just sing this and do it, and when I am gone, you can finish it off." He had, as May put it, no fear.
The most famous and perhaps most heartbreaking anecdote from that period concerns the final song he recorded, Mother Love. Mercury was physically unable to stand or walk. He recorded his vocals while sitting down.
He pushed himself to complete all but the final verse of the song. He then paused and told the band, "I will finish it when I come back next time." He left the studio and never returned. May later had to record that final verse himself, literally marking the last moment Mercury sang professionally.
His final public act was regaining control of the narrative. On November 27, 1991, Mercury called his manager, Jim Beach, to Garden Lodge to prepare a public statement.
That statement was released 24 hours before his death, confirming his HIV status and AIDS diagnosis while reaffirming his desire for privacy for his loved ones. He died the following evening, November 24, 1991, at the age of 45, from bronchial pneumonia, a complication of AIDS. Dave Clark of the Dave Clark 5, a close friend, was by his bedside.
In the aftermath, his Parsi roots reappeared. His funeral service was private, conducted by a Zoroastrian priest, attended by only 35 of his closest family and friends, including the Queen members and Elton John. It was a return to the traditions of Farrokh Bulsara, not the spectacle of Freddie Mercury.
And in the ultimate final act of privacy, Mary Austin took possession of his cremated remains and buried them in an undisclosed location as per his specific wishes. She has steadfastly vowed never to reveal the location, preserving his request for ultimate solitude against the media and fan fervor.
His will reinforced the relationships we discussed earlier. He left Garden Lodge and 50% of his privately owned shares to Mary Austin, who was the anchor of his life. His sister received 25%, and his parents received the remaining 25%, which his sister later inherited. He also ensured significant bequests to Jim Hutton, Peter Freestone, and others.
From a socio-historical standpoint, his death was a powerful turning point. He was the first major rock star to die of AIDS-related complications, and his public acknowledgement, though late, drastically elevated the visibility and awareness of the disease globally.
The tribute organized in his honor reflected his scale. The Freddie Mercury tribute concert for AIDS awareness in April 1992 was a staggering event at Wembley Stadium, drawing 72,000 attendees and broadcast to 76 countries, reaching an estimated 1 billion viewers.
That event led directly to the foundation of the Mercury Phoenix Trust, which has since raised millions for AIDS charities around the world. His death became an accidental catalyst for immense positive change in public health awareness.
Interestingly, his death solidified Queen's immortality, particularly in markets where their popularity had waned, like the U.S. album sales surged dramatically in 1992, coinciding perfectly with the immense pop culture moment of the film Wayne's World, which introduced Bohemian Rhapsody to a new generation.
Today, Queen is officially the UK's best-selling album act, and his songs, particularly We Are the Champions and Bohemian Rhapsody, have been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. The honors continue to be deeply fitting and highly unique.
They certainly are unique. He has a statue overlooking Lake Geneva in Montreux, an English heritage blue plaque in Feltham, and even a street named after him in Warsaw. But the most fitting honors reach beyond terrestrial bounds.
He has an asteroid named after him, 17473 Freddie Mercury. In the world of biology, 2 species bear his name: the frog genus Mercurana in India, connecting him back to his childhood, and the damselfly species Heterogreon Freddie Mercury from Brazil. And in a final poetic tribute to his origin, just recently in May 2024, a crater on the planet Mercury was officially named Bulsara after his birth name.
The ultimate measure of his enduring legacy came in 2023 with the auction of almost 1,500 of his personal items, which he had left to Mary Austin. The entire event, titled Freddie Mercury, A World of His Own, totaled an astonishing $39.9 million.
These items, the artifacts of the private man, commanded extraordinary prices. The Yamaha Baby grand piano he used to compose many of Queen's hits, including Bohemian Rhapsody, sold for £1.7 million. His handwritten lyrics for that masterpiece went for $1.38 million. Even his iconic yellow military jacket from the 1986 Magic Tour sold for £635,000. It proves that the physical objects of the man are now as valuable to the world as the music of the legend.
The demand was for authenticity. People wanted to own a piece of the private, meticulous man who engineered the most public, glorious spectacle.
Okay, let's unpack this incredible journey one last time. We started with Farrokh Bulsara, the shy Parsi boy from Stone Town, Zanzibar, who found order and structure in philately. We trace his flight to England, his study of graphic art, and his highly deliberate creation of the dazzling, volatile, untouchable rock royalty known as Freddie Mercury.
And the key takeaway is that the extravagance was not random. It was strategic. He synthesized high art, graphic design, and music to create a spectacular vision precisely because the man underneath was intensely private and guarded. His death cemented his legacy far beyond music, making him an indelible part of the history of AIDS awareness through the Mercury Phoenix Trust.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We established that Freddie Mercury was a man who genuinely abhorred politics, hated media scrutiny, and prized privacy above all else. Yet he chose the name Queen, adorned himself with crowns, and wore military jacket costumes that are inherently political and regal statements. We know Kurt Cobain admired and envied his power on stage. The question is, was the overwhelming, intoxicating intensity of the Freddie Mercury performance fundamentally fueled by the deep psychological contradictions and the strict, almost severe privacy he maintained in his life offstage? Was the spectacle a necessary counterweight to the solitude? That tension, that push and pull between two identities, is why the champion's legend will continue to echo for generations.